Hi, I'm Rolando Casado. I was part of the U.S. Navy. I was operations specialist, first class. I joined back in '85 during the years of the Cold War. That was an interesting time as I read back on all what it all meant. So it's part of history, even though it wasn't your typical war. We had a race that we needed to win, and finally we did win it, and I was glad to be part of that. So I served from 1985 to 1995 in the U.S. Navy as an operations specialist. That basically is the personnel that work in the surveillance room, the CIC, or the Central Information Center. We keep track of what's going on up in the air, on the surface, and under the water. We monitor and we just report as necessary. Now, after I left the active duty Navy, I went ahead and joined the Army Reserves. I stay affiliated because it was just part of me. And in the Army, I learned many different things in terms of being a foot soldier instead of sailing in the on the ocean. Right now, my MOS is 88 November. I'm a Sergeant First Class. It's a little different. Many things are different in terms of rank structure and the job that we do. Basically, I am a transportation coordinator. That's 88 November. We pretty much coordinate the transfer of equipment personnel overseas or in country. That's one of the main jobs that the Army Reserve across the board is in charge of, as they have unified the active duty and the Army Reserve responsibilities. So this kind of falls under the Army Reserve right now. During my time of service on active duty, we travel. I had the opportunity to travel to South America, Central America, Canada, and many ports in the eastern seaboard of the United States. So I got to visit many cities and ports across the United States, all the way up and down in the east coast. That was a great experience. Also, we had the responsibility of doing training with submarines. Our basic responsibility of our ship was to hunt submarines. So we would do training with our own submarines and also maintain surveillance in the east coast of the United States, making sure that because of the Cold War, the Soviet Union was very actively into surveillance and also traveling up this part of the world. So it was a critical part, a lot of training, lots of training, yet nothing in terms of action or any firing of weapons and so on and so forth. So we were always on the edge of what would happen. But there was a lot of training involved with that. Just looking back at what the Soviet Union is today and what how history has turned the Soviet Union and the Navy, that was a very capable Navy that they had, into really nothing that can be heard of now. So it's quite amazing, and I'm proud that I was part of that era. Where we had to kind of raise and see who had the best weapons and were able to maintain our status as a naval force. So one of the things that we also did, we trained a lot of our reserve personnel on board our ship. We traveled again to South America with a group of reservists. We did exercises on board. We trained and maintained them up to par in their jobs. And And then they would fly back to the United States. We receive another group, and that would again we do more exercises. But we have a core crew on board the ship that would remain all the time. And time it was exhausting doing all our basic functions of without the extra personnel. We only had the reservists at certain times during weekends or 2 weeks at a time. So it was strenuous at times. Once I left the ship, I went to work at the Landing Fleet Weapons Training Facility in Ceiba, Puerto Rico. That even though that's my home, it was considered, ironically, overseas duty. And I gladly took that duty overseas, supposedly, but I was at home. Over there was a very gratifying experience because we had to train all the ships in the East Fleet, and basically before they deployed over to the Mediterranean Sea or any other major deployment, they had to go through a qualification process, and we ran that. We had a major range or control room where we observed everything that took place. We had fleet exercises where missiles were fired. We had a testing center there where missile development and submarine development took place. I learned a lot in terms of computers. I learned a lot in technology. I developed a great, I guess, my experience in computing and technology. That's where it kind of took off. And today, I teach computers at a school, and it all stemmed from there, from the work in military. One of the things that we did in the range within Puerto Rico was we had a remote control ship that other ships had to come in and shoot at it. There was nobody on board, so it was remotely controlled on the island. And it depended on how bad or how well the sea level was. We had to send the RF signal, the radio frequency, to control them. And one time, the weather was bad, waves were high, and the boat was not receiving any signals. So we lost control of it. It was not receiving. So we had to send what we call a chase boat with a crew to go after it. But it locked itself in a southerly heading towards Venezuela, and there was no. I mean. Right there, we were like, okay, so we had the big vessel, the big ship that was doing the operation with us, following it along, but they couldn't do anything, and it just went on and on and on for hours until I believe it ran out of gas, and then they were able to take care of it, and it took quite a bit of time to bring it back, about 3 days for the skeleton crew to come in, board it, refuel it, and then head back to the main island. Now, while I was in Puerto Rico, we also did what we call operations with other integrated operations. We had the Marines, the Army, the Air Force come into the island and do a major amphibious operation. And it was an amazing thing because it was like a mini war happening right there in front of you, and we had to coordinate with local forces and local authorities, the FAA, and the different places here in the island to coordinate frequencies, and we didn't want to interfere with the cable, and we didn't want people calling and saying, my cable doesn't work and that sort of thing. So we always have to kind of interact with the local authorities and agencies in the city. After I left Puerto Rico, I went to become an instructor, a Navy instructor in Virginia Beach, the Fleet Combat Training Facility. That's where my original training took place some 7 or 8 years prior. When I came there as a young recruit, I became an operations specialist. Now I came back in a different light. I became an instructor for a software system, and but before I started teaching the actual component of software or equipment, the teaching experience, the 4 weeks intensive instructor training, I think it served me the most because it taught me how to speak publicly. It taught me, it just scrutinized your every move when you stand in front of people. How do you speak to people? What do you do? Your mannerism, your voice level. So I enjoyed that training. I got so much out of it. And later it translated into me becoming a teacher. I also learned how to do curriculum development for the Navy, and as a matter of fact, that's one of my last jobs before I left active duty was I was the curriculum manager for the school that I trained or that I taught, and we supervised trainers. We make sure that our training was what it needed to be in order to send our sailors out to the fleet and perform in a manner that was expected. So that was quite a responsibility. And also we need to maintain our equipment up to date. As new changes came in, new equipment came in, we had to incorporate the changes into the training manuals and retrain our instructors, make sure that they kept those standards and they incorporated the new phases of the equipment. And that, I believe, that's what launched me into what I later became a teacher. While I was on active duty, I was able to go to night school and finish my education. I received my bachelor's degree in business administration, and later I was able to qualify and so become certified to teach here in Florida in business. And that's what I teach now. I teach in a business education setting, computer technology. Again, all that Navy background, all that computing and technology and evolving through those experiences have brought me to today. So I'm very grateful for the military experience that I had. Was invaluable, and I still use it. The discipline. I'm in preparation right now of becoming an administrator, and I believe firmly that the way that we took care of business in the military, the training and the concepts really will translate into our school setting today. Our schools, I believe, we need to help them, help our students, our kids are coming up now. And I think they need to know about the military, and I believe that they need to be trained in a way that's going to be relevant to their lives, and that's what the military does. As a reservist, I feel that it's an integral part of the armed forces. More than ever, reservists need to step in and help our active duty counterparts, and to relieve them of their duties, give them breaks, to rotate from conflicts and so on. So I'm glad that I'm part of that as well, and I'm currently in a capacity where I'm part of the IRR, and at any moment, anytime, I can receive orders to deploy. So one of those things that we sign up for, and we need to be ready. When I was in, one time our ship was stationed, actually we came to Boston Bay, and we had to park behind, or moored behind the USS Constitution. It's the oldest ship still on active duty today. It's an ironclad from the 1800s, and it's all wood. And one of the responsibilities we had was to make sure that it would not burn. It didn't fire, on board, we had to respond. And I was the officer of the deck import that night. And so at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, I take on the watch, and the orders are passed on. Make sure any fire alarms, you have to report it. We have to wake up everybody from the captain on down and make sure that our fire personnel, our firefighters are out there, and make sure that the ship doesn't burn. Lo and behold, about 4 o'clock in the morning, it's a fire alarm on board the USS Constitution. What do I do? What do I do? Well, I sent a runner out there to find out, make sure that there was is that in fact was a fire. In the meanwhile, I'm waking people up, all ranks, everybody's getting up, and we're getting ready to respond to this fire alarm. And just in the nick of time, somebody came back and said it was a false alarm. So needless to say that anxiety was running high, and everybody was quite excited. We did not want to, and I personally did not want history to go down on my watch. So I had to make sure that I preserve history. So that's what one piece of one story that I like to take with me everywhere, because it's actually in fact history, and if there was a fire, I would have had to respond, and it would have determined how well we did, and it could have gone down in the history books. The USS Constitution no longer on this day, and so on. So, but luckily it's still there, still in Boston Bay. You want to go visit, it's still out there. And there's still an active duty Navy crew on board of that ship. They actually take them, and I think it sells out every now and then. It's like a showboat. Overall, if I can say, one of the things that I can say about the military is that it had left me some training that I will never forget, some disciplines that will never be taken away, lasting friendships. I have folks that I can communicate different parts of the United States. It created a legacy. I have a younger cousin who joined the military, the Navy actually. He did 6 years after that. I was the first to join the military in my family, and after that, cousin came in, and after him, my nephew joined. He just got out of the submarine force. So it created a legacy that I hope my family, my personal family, will be able to follow and continue serving the country, and realizing the importance that some people need to make that sacrifice in order to maintain our great nation and the freedom that ironically is not free, that we take for granted at times. Right now, my support is to the troops, the families. They make a great sacrifice, and I hope that this will serve to hopefully bring that patriotism in some of our young people who are listening out there. Thank you.